As we get older, exercise and good nutrition are going to help keep your bones strong. And then in menopause, that's when there's a real issue and a real opportunity to prevent bone loss. With menopause, you lose estrogen, and the annual rate of bone loss can be 2% 1 to 3 years after menopause. So, 5 to 10 years even, you can lose up to 20% of your bone. It doesn't matter where you're at. There's things that can be done. It's not like, oh my gosh, I found out I have osteoporosis, my life is over. Absolutely not. It's just an opportunity to figure out, okay, the bones are not in isolation. So what you do for your bones is going to help everything else in your body as well.
So you probably didn't wake up this morning thinking about your bone health. But one day you will have to, and by then it may be a little late. Today's episode is one of those conversations that can quietly change everything about how you've shown up for yourself. I sat down with the amazing Margie Bissinger, a bone health expert, and together we are talking about bone health, but not from this place of fear, but really of one of agency. Bone health isn't just about avoiding osteoporosis someday. It's about strength, independence, confidence, and the ability to live fully in your body for decades to come. This conversation matters so much for you because if you've ever struggled to find a why that goes beyond the scale, this is going to really speak to you. When you understand how your daily choices impact your bones, your hormones, your mobility, and your future self, something shifts. Showing up for movement, nutrition, being consistent, it starts to feel sometimes like another thing on your to-do list unless you have a really strong reason why it matters. In this episode, Margie is going to break down for us why bone health is often overlooked until it's a problem, what we need to know as we age, and most importantly, what you can actually start doing literally today to start building stronger bones and a stronger future. If you have been looking for a deeper reason to care for your body beyond the weight loss stuff, this is it. This episode isn't going to be about doing more. It's about understanding why it matters. Let's go. Well, hey there, diet disruptors. This is an episode that has been a long time coming. I have been looking for the perfect person to be able to talk to you all about your bones. And I found her. Margie Bissinger is an incredible expert on all things bones. And you as a woman need to pay attention to your bones. Well, hey there, Margie. Thanks for being here.
Oh, hi, Carrie. So happy to be here with you and your crew.
We have a lot to talk about. I don't think women really understand how important it is to think about, understand, and do something about your bone strength. I think more and more is coming out now, but this is such an important topic that we really just have to dig into. So tell us a little bit about you and why you know so much about bones.
It's really funny because it started way back. So I'm a physical therapist and I'm also an integrative health coach. But at the time I was just a physical therapist working in an outpatient clinic, working with neck pain, back pain, all sorts of things. And I had training in women's health issues and osteoporosis. So I had the background. And a group of doctors approached me, their endocrinologists, would I see their patients with osteoporosis? And that was great, I would love to. And I was so upset when I started seeing these women with what I was seeing. Again, this is a while ago. This is 30 years ago. And people were coming in and, the doctor had said exercise, but they didn't really know what that meant. So they were doing exercises, a lot of them, that actually increased their risk of spinal fractures just because they didn't know who to turn to. Personal trainers, it wasn't even the internet at the time, so they were turning to exercise books or they were turning to things they have read. And so they just didn't have the knowledge.
What kind of things were they doing?
They were doing forward flexion, rounding exercises. This is the spine. And this is the front and this is the back, but it's the front of the spine that's supposed to be nice and square shaped. This is ideal. But what happens with osteoporosis sometimes is that the forces are in the front and you get crush, and it becomes wedge shaped. So now all the force is on the front, and that's where fractures begin. So when you're bending forward, it's the fulcrum is right on the front. So they found that forward bending, you're doing just too much forward bending and rounding increases fracture risk. And one study at the Mayo Clinic showed people who only did rounding, like touching their toes and this and that, they had these are people with osteoporosis, an 89% fracture rate.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack here because I think there's this whole, well, I mean, I know there is this whole belief of as you get older, you're just going to get weaker, right? This is what's going to happen. And we know there's so much science now about how we can improve our bone health. And then we have osteopenia, we have osteoporosis. So we have to start we got to start at kindergarten levels with us. Okay. So start us at kindergarten and let's move our way through. And the real messaging that I want us to be able to get to are strategies to improve bone health, because that's what's really going to be key, because we can improve it. But let's start at the very beginning. We're at Bone Health 101. Take us to kindergarten.
Yeah, first of all, I think the big misconception is that people think it's only an older person's thing. Sometimes you don't even know you have it until you're 65. But really, throughout your life, you're building bone. So kids, actually, they had 85 to 90% of their peak bone, women by age 18 and men by 20. And so what we do with our children and are they exercising? Are they eating food that's going to help build bone? Or, are they having diets that are junk? Or are they have eating disorders? There's all sorts of things. So what we do when we're younger really matters.
Well, let's just tap into that for a second, because my daughter's babysitting a kid, right? And she comes home she was on college break, and she was like, Mom, literally all they eat are like processed food, things in packages. There's no vegetables. It's just fast and like bagel bites and mac and cheese and chicken nuggets and just the fast processed stuff. And it's not just about weight. It's not just about, energy and focus, but these are things that we don't think about for kids, and they impact us forever. I always say I want us to be able to change our family tree. And we often think about it financially, like giving our kids a better life than we had financially. But what you're talking about right now in these young ages, I don't think we all think about it when we're getting older. We don't realize what we're doing to kids now.
And it's sort of like a bank, you put deposits in when you're young, you're jumping, you're building bone, you're eating good nutrients, you're doing things to support healthy bones, hopefully, right? Like that person, we'll get into that. It matters though. So that person could have problems later on, but we need to figure it out. But anyway, so when we're that age, but then as people get older, and it's still super important, and we can talk about like what exercise, what actually builds bone, but doing things all throughout your life can be so helpful because you build more bone. So then if you do lose a little, you have this bank to draw from, versus if you never built that bone to begin with, you're going to be at much higher risk. But the good news, and I've been doing this now for over 30 years, and it's so empowering, is that they're every age. It doesn't matter where you're at. There's things that can be done. And the goal is, it's not like, oh my gosh, I found out I have osteoporosis, my life is over. Absolutely not. It's just an opportunity to figure out, okay, the bones are not in isolation. So what you do for your bones is going to help everything else in your body as well.
Well, that's like with everything, right? Like I think we constantly are going after things in our body like it's whack-a-mole.
Yes.
And I think Casey Means talks about this in Good Energy, that everything's connected and we have to stop putting everything in silos. And I think bones, honestly, with all of the women that I've worked with for so long, they're putting it in its own little silo.
Yes. And there's not even like a bone doctor. You know what I mean? It's not even like, yes, you can see maybe the endocrinologist, the rheumatologist, but it's in the integrative approach, which is what I believe in. It's part of everything. If you're not digesting, you have a digestive issue, that's going to affect your bones. If you're inflamed, everything goes together. So anyway, so back to that age, there's the children. And then as we get older, a lot of times people, there's, exercise and good nutrition are going to help keep your bones strong. And then in menopause, that's when there's a real issue and a real opportunity to prevent bone loss. Because typically when people go through bone loss, with menopause, you lose estrogen And you can have, the annual rate of bone loss can be 2%, 1 to 3 years after menopause. So, 5 to 10 years even. You lose up to 20% of your bone. So, yeah. So that's the point. That's the area that I just think I'm so passionate about reaching people, because they can, hormones are such a big deal. And now we know how safe that is for the majority of people. And so you can prevent, when you do go on bioidentical hormone replacement, you can prevent bone loss.
I just did a whole podcast episode with Dr. Sarah Dackert, who's a hormone specialist and expert. And when they finally took the black box labels off of HRT, I was just like, finally, because you and I both, we're not big medication people, right? We don't want medication to be the answer and to the solution. But HRT is so interesting because when you have bioidentical hormones, it's almost like you're getting the FDA, oversight, but we're talking about almost like a regulated supplement that I feel like is just so important to be able to replenish back in our own system. But we could do a whole episode on that. But I love that we're on the same page.
So funny, Carrie. So my husband's an OBGYN, and people are calling left and right. Since that black box warning was taken off, they can't get it. It's all sold out. Can you imagine?
So, well, that's good. That's a good problem to have.
I have to wait like a month to replenish. There's only, some of the generics and things, but there's people are like absolutely freaked out. He's getting calls left and right that people can't get their bio.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So menopause, it's almost like a guarantee. As we lose estrogen, progesterone, our bone density, our bone strength is going to diminish. And you talk about exercise and you talk about diet. Exercise, though, is the thing that I think so many people get confused on. We think walking with a weight vest. When we talk about exercise, what are you really talking about?
Well, this is what's so exciting. Dr. Belinda Beck in Australia, I love the research she did. There's been other studies, but she just said something's wrong, because we were telling people, don't lift too much weight because you could hurt yourself. And what builds bone? Bones respond to the forces placed upon them. So what she did a study called the Lift More study. And it was done in Australia. And what they did, it was supervised, which is very important, because if you look at the exercises that were in it, overhead press, deadlift, they took women and they worked them at 85% of one repetition maximum. So it's like 5 sets of 5 repetitions, but it's hard, resting in between. And they prepared them. They really taught them posture and breathing. So it wasn't like they just put them in this situation. So it was doing exercises and then even impact, starting with just up on your toes, down on your heels, to like a little bit of jumping type of thing. So impact and resistance.
So strength and impact.
Yes. And with high intensity resistance training and impact. And what they found, improvement in bone density, significant in the spine, the hips, significant reduction in fractures. And even they used this type of imaging of the hip difference, this like 3D type, and they found that the shape of the hip actually changed. So the area that's most prone to fracture, the femoral neck, changed its geometry. So it was incredible results, and it blew everybody away. But it was so respected because it was done. It's a randomized controlled trial. It was done. It was just a phenomenal thing. Now, this is years ago now. So then what they did, they wanted to see, they'd done a couple other things where they compared different things. But then what they wanted to see, okay, well, let's see now if it's not they had physical therapists and exercise physiologists running the program only, which is so important.
Okay.
Anyway, so then they wanted to see, well, what happens in the clinic, if it's not a study anymore, and the same results happen. So now that's called the ONERA program. It's all over now. It's all over the country. They've really spread it, which is amazing. I do it myself. But what they're finding, I just interviewed Belinda again, 10 years, I think people are still gaining bone. So what I saw, it was really funny because I interviewed her for one of my summits. And I said, Belinda, is there anyone, because this was done in Australia, anyone in the United States doing this? One person. I said, where is she? Somerset, New Jersey, 25 minutes from where I live. So I had her on the podcast, and I said, I'm doing this. I have to do it myself. So I've been doing it now for almost 2 years.
So it's a type of strength training program that you're doing,
Yes, but
technically.
it's basically overhead press, deadlifts.
So functional strength training.
Yes. Weighted squat, doing like squats, things like that. So it's functional, exactly. And anyway, but I see all the women, everybody, and these people, some of them are couch potatoes. And you just start where you're at. Each person can start, but it's unbelievable how empowered, strong, and everyone's increasing their bone. My bone density increase. And there's something called the trabecular bone score, which measures the quality of your bone. That improved. So it's just, besides, that's not the only program, but the point that we've learned from all this is that, and it's just twice a week. It's just twice a week. It's at the strength training at a higher level with supervision. Very important, because people could really, I do not recommend someone reads that study and does it themselves. And there is something called Onero at home. It's not the same at all. It's just a home exercise program, but you can work with a physical therapist, do strength training, and it's going to make a difference. And I've seen that it doesn't have to be this program. I've seen people with Pilates using the reformer. I've seen people do all sorts of programs, and they've improved their bone density. So I think, to me, this is just something, if you're not doing strength training, I mean, there's other things that have to be done in an exercise program. Balance, because we don't want to fall. That's the key. Posture. Aerobics is just good for cardiovascular, and a recent study showed the aerobics plus the strength training is even the best. But anyway, I just can't rave enough about how people's lives were changed and how they thanked me for getting them into the strength training twice a week. It's not a long time. It's not a huge commitment, but it's just adding that piece to it.
Why do you think people, especially women, struggle with making the decision to strength train consistently? It's like, I get on my bandwagon about Orange Theory because it pretends to be strength training, but there's no heavy weights. Like, the weights are not that heavy. They're not heavy enough at all. And yet, like, we get this false sense of like progression or security that we're doing something. I love that we're moving our body, but it's strength heavy lifting under supervision that's actually going to change your bone health.
Exactly.
Why do you think people are struggling with it? Convincing people to do it is so hard.
I think people don't know, number one. Number two, I think, I see people, I've been lifting 3 pounds for 5 years or whatever. That's not going to do it. I think people are scared. They might hurt themselves. That's why I think it's so important to work with someone who's really knowledgeable in strength training, really knows what they're doing. But I think once you do it, oh my gosh, if you're able to lift your suitcase on the plane, or you're able to do things in life, lift a grandchild, no problem. And it's possible. It's not that it's impossible. It happens slowly, but I see this every single day. And it's just, to me, the most exciting thing. And I think, I just think it's coming out everywhere. It really is. I've seen it, everyone, every age. So the sooner you can start, again, just twice a week. That's all I do it. That kind of strength training is twice a week. Taking breaks. We only do, the thing is this, it's not the repetitions. So if you can lift something, 30 times, that's not high enough. I would say usually start, 8 to 10. The Onero only does 5 sets of 5. So after 5, you're sort of tired. Like, you couldn't.
You should feel tired, though. You should feel that level of, like, you almost can't do the last few
That's it. You can't do it. So then you take a 2-minute break. I take 2-minute breaks in between sets. Yeah, do other things during that. But, that's how you can lift the higher weights comfortably. But it's critical, and it's covered by insurance. If you do have osteopenia, osteoporosis, you certainly can, for any injury, if you have back injury, knee, you can see a physical therapist who will work with you. And there are people that help people with this, and if there's an Onero program, or there's something called bone fit training, you can find people who have bone fit. But the point is, this is doable. And doing this for so many years, and it does move the needle. And the nicest thing, which to me is so exciting, is that conventional medicine knows this now, because there's research studies and people know that, yes, that's so. I think that's really important. Even if you're I'm not anti-medicine, I have to say. I'm anti-somebody falling and fracturing.
And let's be honest, no medicine is going to keep that from happening. The only thing that's going to keep that from happening if you fall is strengthening your bones?
I think the thing is this. Sometimes people, if you get a bone density in your bones, if there can be issues. Someone who's had different cancer treatments or different things. The key is we don't want anyone fracturing. So if I look at medication, especially the new medications that build bone, a short term, you're on it while you're doing, if you need this as like a gap, a bridge or something, so that you don't, if you do fall, you don't have a fracture, at least build out bone while you're doing all the other things. But some people think, I'm going on the medication, that's it. No, 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 no. You have to do the nutrition. You have to do the exercise. And so that's the exercise piece.
I love that. Okay, so let's dig into when I had my bone density test. And is that the test that you would recommend that women need to be doing?
Yes.
And because I went through menopause early, I actually had it earlier than most. But I just feel like we should all have this test so we can have an understanding of what's happening.
It's interesting because I know the OBGYNs, they used to say 65. Yeah. No, that's way too.
That's what mine said.
Yeah, it's way too late. I think the minute you start going through menopause or before, any changes, get a baseline. Or unless you have issues. If you have inflammation, if you've been on steroids, if you had eating disorders, you can get it earlier and just see what's going on. But for the average person, I would get it, the minute you notice any changes, to get a baseline so you see where you're at. But before you get your first bone density, what I would do is find a place that has something called trabecular bone score, TBS. And if you Google that, I think it's called Medimaps, you'll find out where there are places near you, because the bone density only shows you the amount of bone, how dense it is. So two people with, let's say, minus 2.5, which is they look at your bone on the DEXA and they compare that to a 30-year-old. And then they look at standard deviations away for that. So the one that we're most interested in usually is the T-score. So anything 0 to -1 is considered normal. -1 to -2.5, they label osteopenia, and -2.5 or lower is osteoporosis. But two people with osteoporosis, one could have really great bones, they've been eating well, same bone density, and one could have horrible quality bones that the minute they fall, they fracture. So the difference is the quality. So in the trabecular bone score, they superimpose like an X-ray type of thing over that software, so they can tell the quality. They look at the spine. So it's very helpful.
And how often should we be doing these tests? Once we have a baseline, so I had my first bone density test last year. So when should what should I be testing again?
It really depends. It depends on what's found. If you get your first, let me continue. So the TBS, I highly recommend. Yeah. There are some other things that they're looking into now. I don't think they replaced the bone density. One's called the REMS Echolite. So, that also helps with quality. But right now, I think the key that I always recommend for right now are the bone density and get the TBS, so you know the quality of your bone. But and then if everything's good, okay. If it's not good, the next test, because we don't know. Let's say you get this test and you have a number. Well, we don't know. Is it that you just didn't accrue bone when you were younger? Is it that, or are you is some process going on of inflammation that you're actively losing bone? And it matters for the treatment. Yeah. So there's another test. There's two other tests I always recommend if there's a problem with your bone density. If your bone density is good, fine. But if not, then we want to dig deeper, like what's going on. So there's a test called CTX. I never pronounce it right. C-telepeptide, I think of type 1 collagen, but it's called the CTS. And that measures bone breakdown. So there's two kinds of cells. There are cells, the osteoclast, because the bone that you have isn't the same bone. Bone turns over and remodels. So every 7 to 10 years, you get a new skeleton. So what happens is like old bone, the body gets rid of some old bone and replaces it with new bone. So there's these cells called the osteoclast.
Which is why it's never too late.
It's never too late. That dig, and they get rid of some old bone. And then there's osteoblast, the B, they build bone. So you can measure the osteoclast with the CTX. And then there's another test called P1NP. I never pronounce it right. But anyway, it's P1NP. And what that does, that measures the osteoblast. So you can sort of get a thing of what's going on. And if there's an issue that you're going to work on, you can test that much sooner, because bone density, the absolute soonest, if everything's good, you probably won't test it for another 2 years or something. But if it's not good and there's changes and you're making changes, I would say you'd retest it in 1 year. But meanwhile, you can, so for example, when people have gone on bioidentical hormones, if let's say their CTX is showing massive bone loss, they're like very high, and they go on the estrogen, it's unbelievable how that changes. The CTX, you'll see that right away almost. So you can use, I think they're called bone turnover markers. And I find them so helpful in figuring out what to do.
So if your test with the osteoblast comes back where it's not great, does that mean you're not producing new bone?
Yeah, it can mean a lot of times what happens is, you're losing more bone. It should be you're losing some, but you're building more. And you want it to be like the CTX. You want the P1NP to be around at least 1/10 of the CTX. But if it's lower, that's an issue too.
This is really helpful. So these level of tests are really important. And if you see issues in the first few, to keep digging deeper, and you're going to have to advocate for yourself with your doctor because they're not going to necessarily tell you about them. When I went through, and I only did bone density, so now you're getting me all knowledgeable about what I need to do. But I have osteopenia in one hip, which is so interesting because I've been strength training for 12 years. Now I understand that osteopenia is reversible. Osteoporosis is not.
Well, no.
Did I hear that right?
The interesting thing is what we found is you can improve bone at any age. You can increase bone at any age. So it depends. It depends what the cause is. There's another thing that I'm going to tell everybody. You check. This is so interesting. After having 4 summits, and I had a parathyroid surgeon on the summit, and she talked about blood calcium levels. And if you are over 40 and your blood calcium is over 10, you really need to get that checked, because we found at least 5 people each summit had hyperparathyroidism. These are tumors on the parathyroid that's taking bone. It's causing, yeah.
So that test will help you know that.
And everybody gets this anyway. Everybody gets this as part of their regular blood workup. But the doctors first, what happens is it's too wide a range. It's all ages. So if you're 20 and you have 10, that's okay. But it's not okay if you're over 40. So we have picked up so many people with this. And I really think it's very important. Just look at your own blood work. Just check it out.
Yep. That's so empowering to be able to have that knowledge. What is your thought about calcium supplements? So my doctor was knows I strength train. So he added in calcium supplements, to my regular routine. What are your thoughts on that?
We need calcium. We absolutely need calcium. But the problem is, I think people went crazy with calcium, because all the doctors, that's what they'll tell you. Calcium, vitamin D. Well, calcium is a combination. How much do you get in your food? And then supplement as needed.
And so often we think dairy. And it kind of drives me crazy how my daughter's pediatrician kept asking if they drink milk. And I'm like, no, they don't. Because it was just super inflammatory for them, but they get calcium in so many other foods. I'm like, why are you not bringing out the foods that actually matter?
It's so true, because we have the most dairy in this country and the highest level of osteoporosis. So dairy, and they used to have the milk mustaches and all that. It's the panacea. And so many people are inflamed from dairy. So it just does the opposite, quite honestly.
Exactly.
So I think what I always tell people is calculate your calcium in your food, minus the oxalates. Do you want me to mention what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So oxalates are a compound like spinach, Swiss chard, beet greens. They're high oxalate food. And what happens is it's a compound that it attaches to the calcium and basically makes it non-usable.
Oh, interesting. So those are foods that we often talk about being high in calcium.
But don't count them. You can't count them because they're not usable. And if anything, there are people who have issues with oxalates. So it's something we don't want a lot of. So when you're counting your calcium, it's important. There's a really good app called Cronometer, and Cronometer, that really can help you with this. Or if you even look at a package and it says 30% calcium, you add 300 milligrams. And so, but here's the thing. If you go, for years they said if you're over 50, you need 1,200 milligrams. But there have been some studies that they looked at, one in particular, that showed over 1,000, there was a 15% increase in cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease. So the thing is, really 800 to 1,000 is enough. It's enough to be bone protective and without causing problems. Now, in this study, they didn't look at magnesium, K2, which we can talk about, cofactors that help with the absorption. But regardless, it's just not worth getting. More is not better with calcium. So go through your diet, see where you're getting the calcium that's not, and then you can take like 1,000 and subtract what you're getting, 800 to 1,000, subtract what you're getting, and that's what you supplement.
Yes. Okay. What are your favorite high calcium foods?
Okay, but one more thing about the supplementation.
Okay, go ahead.
You don't want more than 390. They've done studies. So don't take more than 390 at one time. It won't be absorbed. So if you're taking a supplement, the 390.
Because it is so important with supplements, like we absorb very little actually of the supplementation, and especially depending on our absorption levels, which comes from our food intake. Like how well are we absorbing food, and supplements is a direct correlation to the types of foods that we're putting into our bodies.
Yeah. So my favorite types of calcium, I love collard greens. I think they have like 265. Collard greens are great. And the other thing is when you eat it like with greens and you eat it from the food, you're getting all the other nutrients as well. There's magnesium.
Yeah.
All right, so collard greens are great. And you can use those as a wrap. Just steam it. You can make a turkey burger. You can put all sorts of stuff on it. So collard greens, I think most people don't think of them like that. They think of maybe if they're from the South, they've like grown up with collard greens, but it's great as a wrap and you can put interesting sauces, whatever. The other one, bok choy, that's high calcium.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, I love bok choy. Kale is good. But then there's two others that are huge that a lot of people don't know about. Basil seeds. Are you familiar with this?
No.
So it's sort of almost identical to chia seeds, but way more protein and way more calcium. And
really?
Chia, I've always was a big fan until I saw how high oxalate chia seeds was. This basil seeds, I buy this Zen basil. I just buy it on Amazon. Amazing. I started looking into basil.
And what do you do? Do you put it like in yogurt or?
You would use it just like I put it in my smoothie. You would use it just like I use chia seeds. It works. Yeah. If you make chia pudding, you can make it with basil pudding. Way more than double the protein, double the calcium. It's really great.
Oh, I am going to get that. That is so great.
The other thing I love is, Gerald Steiner is a brand of water. It's a brand of mineral water that's carbonated, but it has high calcium in it. So you could, if you drink, and it's very safe and it's excellent. So there's good, so you could just.
Where do you get that?
I get it at Trader Joe's. That's the cheapest place. But they sell it all over. So it's called Gerald Steiner. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. But yeah, that's a great way. Sardines with bones are good. I like wild salmon is good, to get calcium. So there's lots of different ways. Obviously, it doesn't have to be from dairy, certain nuts and seeds. But, you want to be careful. Again, don't want too many. With like almonds are good, but it can be high oxalate. Like some people drink tons of almond milk.
Well, it's always like I talk about the variety.
Yeah.
And just having a diet that is really, it's varied in all of these types of things so that you're not stuck on one thing, because no one food is ever going to be perfect. And I think variety is really the key.
But one thing with the supplements, the one I don't recommend that's the cheapest and everybody has is calcium carbonate. And the reason that is because you need stomach acid. First of all, it's least well absorbed. It's not well absorbed. And then and most people as they get older don't have enough stomach acid. So you even need stomach acid for it to be active. So the one thing, like magnesium, I think is really important as well. But the other thing that's totally missing for some reason is vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 takes that calcium, it activates a protein called osteocalcin that puts it into your bones and takes it out of the soft tissue. That activates a second. So
you suggest K2 and calcium?
I suggest, yes, calcium, magnesium, vitamin D for most people, unless you live near the equator. K2, yes. And there's two types, MK4, MK7. I recommend combination of both because MK7 is really good for your heart. And MK4, there's more research on the bones. So, yeah.
This is so important. So many good nuggets. I know that some people are going to have to go back and listen to this twice and take some notes. And I know that you have a little gift for everybody to be able to help them with some of the information that you're sharing. Tell us about what you got for us.
Yes. So in terms of, first of all, don't get overwhelmed. I think it's really important. Both Carrie and I are big believers in one step at a time. And any step you do is going to be good. It's not like, oh my gosh, I have to do all these things. Because stress is a negative. So we want to reduce our stress. But anything you do is good. So wherever you start, just commend yourself, number one. And you can just do things really gradually. But what I put together was what exercises that everybody can start with. So basically it goes through, because posture is so important. So many of us are sitting, and that really affects your bones, your overall health. So in this,
Look at me, I'm sitting up straighter now.
So in the exercise program, I do a little video on just really talking about strength training and just a little bit of information on what to do, what not to do. But then in terms of the exercises I show you a few posture exercises. I do a whole thing on balance. Like, what exercises can we do that really help our balance? It's not just standing on one foot. So there's a couple things that everybody can do, because at the end of the day, we don't usually just fall for the sake of falling. Usually, and a lot of us, as we get older, we lose our balance if we don't practice it. So I think there's 6 balance exercises. A video I made, just a short one on balance exercises. I also show 2 weight-bearing things that you can do during the day, easy, just to put forces through your bones. And
That's going to be such a good resource, because it's going to be something everybody can do to be able to take that first next step.
Exactly. Yep. So I'll give you, so that's
amazing. All right. So tell everybody where they can find you if they want to connect with you, they want to learn more from you. Tell us.
Okay. Yeah. So just go to margiebissinger.com. And the other thing that you can do is, so my podcast, which Carrie's been on, did a phenomenal episode on the BSs. That was so fun, Carrie. But yeah, if you haven't listened, you should listen to that, because it was so good.
That was a good one. That was fun.
But anyway, my podcast is called Happy Bones, Happy Life. And it's on all podcast channels.
Great. So let's make sure we check that out. We'll put all of that information in our show notes, along with the link for you to be able to download all these exercises that are going to help you with balance and strength and get you to where you need to go, one step at a time. Margie, you're the best. Thank you so much for being here, for educating, for just giving up all of your knowledge. 30 plus years of knowledge we were able to do in about 30 minutes, which is pretty amazing. I know there's so much more for people to be able to learn and dig into. So make sure you go follow Margie. You're the best. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Carrie. It's always so much fun being with you.